What I'm about to show you is a little bit crazy.
I think I made a modification, but maybe not on purpose. So I'm going to make my life a little bit harder.
I am, at this point, self-drafting a sock.
I frogged it. So it is Monday morning right now. It is Monday, October 6th. Welcome to my desk. I work from home, so you're catching me like right before I start my workday and join my first meeting. I'm filming this almost a week after posting my first knitting podcast episode. For context, if you're new here, I have been knitting my own clothes for about a year now, and I've gained a lot of confidence and I feel pretty good about that. But with socks, I've only knit 2 pairs of socks ever. I did the Petal Drop socks by Florence Miller as my first pair of socks, and then the Yuki Doke socks by Yuka as my second. The TLDR on that is that I don't feel like I've found my perfect strategy, number of stitches, etc. And I put out a call in that video for advice for me and for everybody else. I'm hoping that people find that comment section to be really helpful. A couple of people mentioned that it would be a good idea to knit a vanilla pair of socks and use that to kind of find the best fit in a vanilla sock and then kind of move up to more complex knits from there. That's very good advice. That's correct. I'm not super interested in knitting a vanilla sock right now. It's just not what I want to knit. So I'm going to make my life a little bit harder, but I hear you. You're all a lot smarter than I am. But the main advice I got in that last video was that this takes a lot of trial and error, and also to take notes about what you're doing so that you can reference back. And that, as someone who doesn't know what they're doing, that is the advice that really resonated with me. I'm a bit of an over planner. I really plan out my knits before I cast them on. And I think that's why I'm kind of overthinking these socks. But I'll say as much as I over plan, I'm not necessarily good at documenting things. I feel like when I'm in the mood to knit, I'm not necessarily in the mood to put down my knitting and take notes on what I'm doing. So I'm gonna keep that in mind, and that's actually why I've started this video. I have a ton of sock yarn right now, and I also have 52 weeks of socks for a limited amount of time because my hold just came in from the library. So it's kind of perfect timing. I've got all this yarn, I've got this book. I don't have a garment quantity of yarn to work with, so we're gonna do socks. So let's talk about my plans. I'll show you the yarn that I have to work with. And another thing that I'll say is that the point of this video is not how many socks can I knit in a month. You can see from my channel name, I'm all about taking your time with things. This is a hobby. This is more about how much can I learn in a month. So I'm gonna show some kind of ambitious plans because I have a lot of patterns that I would like to make, but it's not a goal to make all of these throughout the month. I'll start with what I already have cast on. So if you watched my last podcast, I showed this whip that I was working on. It is the Berries and Bird Tracks sock, which is from volume 2 of 52 Weeks of Socks by Yuka. And this is what it looks like now. I frogged it. So after I started getting all of this advice, I'm sure that sock, that whip would have worked out, but I now have all of these better strategies that I want to try with my socks. And the idea of making an entire second sock, I was basically almost done with the first one. The idea of making an entire second sock when I knew that it was not a top tier strategy, I just figured in the spirit of learning this month, rip it back. I still want to do that pattern, the Berries and Bird Tracks. I still want to do it in this yarn. I think this yarn is gorgeous. It's the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply in the color Cornflower. I don't know if I mentioned, but as I'm filming this, I finished my Lauder cardigan yesterday. You'll probably see it in this video. It's blocking right now, and I'm sure I'm gonna wear it so much as soon as it's done blocking. But I'm a little cabled out at the moment, as I'm sure you can understand. So Berries and Bird Tracks is a whip, technically, that I'm very excited about, but it is going to wait. It's not the one I'm currently working on. When I got this book in, I asked on Instagram what some recommendations were from that book, if anybody had knit from it, and the Oona sock was one of them. So that is my first cast on from the book. As a break from cables, I really do gravitate towards cables as a texture, but I think some very simple lace, which is what this looks like, is going to be the thing for right now. It also looks quite similar to the Petal Drop socks by Florence Miller, which is something that I've already done. So in looking for not really an easy win, but like another data point in my sock knitting documentation here, I think that's going to be good. What I'm doing right now, I finished the cuff. I'm doing this in the first size, and I'm doing it on 2.25 millimeter needles. This is the same needle size that I did the Petal Drop socks on, in a very similar stitch count, a couple stitches less. But I did find that the Petal Drop socks are, again, they fit, but they're on the bigger side. So I'm hoping that this, which is similar lace pattern, same needle size, slightly fewer stitches, is going to be a winner for fit. I will say that after having done the cuff, it seems maybe on the smaller side compared to the Petal Drop socks. And the only variable I can think of here is the yarn. I'm doing this in Filcolana Arwetta, which is it's an 80% merino, 20% nylon, but it seems like a sort of thinner, finer yarn. Actually, let me look that up quickly. Okay, yes, can confirm. Okay, so I did the Petal Drop socks in San Nisgarn Sisu. That is 175 meters to 50 grams. The Filcolana Arwetta is 210 meters to 50 grams. So that's a pretty significant difference. And now I'm wondering if these might turn out on the smaller side because of that gauge difference. I'll show you some other patterns that I have in mind for this month, as well as some yarns. So another yarn that I have is the Lang Jawol, and this is in, I'm not sure of the color name, it's just gray though. And this is actually the same exact weight as the Filcolana Arwetta, so 210 meters to 50 grams. So that's actually good to know, because whatever I learn with the Arwetta can hopefully be applied to the Jawol. And then the other yarn that I have is quite exciting. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it yet, but I got these two skeins from a local fiber fest. This is from Amaranth Fibers, which is a local dyer. They are, I would say, lightly variegated. This color is Blue Roundhead. This one is Woodland Camouflage. So based on the light variegation, probably not like a heavily textured knit that I want to do. I could also hypothetically do some color work, which is a thought. I've had my eye on that, I think it's called Dream House by Charlotte Stone, and the blue and green would work really well for that. So if I end up in a mood for color work, that is a possibility. So going back to my book here, another one that I had in mind was Intersections, which is a pattern by Merceline Smith. And for that one, it is cabled, so I'll have to be in the mood for cables again. But to me, that looks like waves, and I think this blue would be gorgeous for it. So I've kind of got that in mind if I don't want to go for the color work idea. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. For now, I do need to get to work, and I've got my Oona sock to work on, and I'll update you with any conclusions that I come to in terms of this yarn, how it compares to the sisu that I worked with previously, and how I feel about the sizing as I start on the lace here. Hi everyone, it's the next morning and I have some updates for you. I have most of a sock. So this is the progress on my Oona sock. I got a lot done yesterday. I just was lucky to have a lot of time to knit, and this is going really well. So it definitely fits. I'm really happy with the fit. One thing that's kind of interesting is that yesterday, the last time I updated you, I was saying that the cuff seemed a little bit tight. That's still true, and what's interesting is that on my other socks I've found that the heel part of it has been the tightest. On this one, it's getting the cuff over my foot that's the tightest. Still gets on perfectly fine, but I wonder if I was just knitting too tight at that stage. But anyway, really happy with the rest of this. I did want to mention some modifications before I forget. So the cuff is the first modification I made. This I did a half twisted or full twisted rib. I just prefer the look of that. I have tried doing regular rib on the cuff of a sock, and I feel like as soon as it stretches out, it doesn't look as nice. So I just did twisted rib. Next modification is I like shorter socks. So I think that the leg part of this sock is about half the length of what the pattern recommended. Yeah, about half. Oh, in the heel, for the heel turn section, I think I made a modification, but maybe not on purpose. I was just kind of following the instructions where it said to turn for short rows, doing German short rows, but I think that the pattern was actually maybe getting at a different type of short row. Either way, I think the result is the same, but I just did the technique that I'm used to and I like doing, which is German short rows. A couple really interesting things about this pattern. The heel flap is different from what I've done in the past. I believe that this is called an Eye of Partridge heel. It's not a slip stitch heel. It does have slip stitches in it, but it doesn't have those kind of defined lines of slip stitches. And I think I really like that because it still has some interesting texture to it, but it's not as I don't know, in your face. It doesn't take anything away from the texture of the sock, which I really like. The other interesting thing in this pattern is, this will be easier to show you once it's blocked, but on the side here, there's a little bit of garter stitch. I think I like that. I'm not 100% sold on it. It did make it easier to pick up stitches for the gusset. But I'm not the biggest fan of the aesthetics of garter stitch. Now, one thing I will say about working from this book is that because there's 52 patterns in one book, there's no extra information, and generally I like that. I like a kind of simple pattern that's just to the point. But one example of where that extra information would be nice is when I got to the instructions for this heel flap and I realized, oh, this isn't a slip stitch one. I was wondering what it was called. I'm pretty sure it's an Eye of Partridge one, but normally I would reference back the beginning of the pattern where there's usually that introductory paragraph that says, this is a cuff down sock. It uses this technique. It's inspired by such and such. There isn't anything like that in this book. So there is a very short page of information before the pattern instructions, which says the yarn weight, the needle size, etc., but nothing about what techniques are going to be used or what designers usually include on the first couple pages of a pattern. What I'm starting to wonder is if my petal drop socks would have fit if the sock yarn had been a more standard weight, because I do think that the sisu is relatively thick, which is kind of a shame because I really enjoyed working with the sisu. So I'm wondering if in the future when I work with sisu, if I should size down the needles by one. That might be the move. But I think this is a really good data point that on like a standard-ish sock yarn, this is a good stitch count, this is a good needle size for me. I've got a couple busy days at work, and I also have my niece's skating lessons. On that, I'll just say, you have not known chaos until you have been to a 2-year-old skating lesson. Like, these kids were just learning how to walk a year ago, and now we're like, let's put blades on those feet. So yeah, I have to get to work, but I will update you, I believe, when I finish this sock. Okay, hi everyone. My sweater's done blocking, or my cardigan. I'm really happy with it. This is my first time wearing it. I'm literally about to sew on the buttons, which is why I've got quite a look going on with the stitch markers here. But yeah, it's great. I'll see if I can show you a little bit. Anyway, it's been a few days and we are here to talk socks. To be so honest with you, I'm pretty exhausted, not because of the socks. Yeah, every so often for my job, I have to give 4-hour presentations in French, which is my second language. This week, it happened to make me think about the knitting community because I've been getting a lot of comments on my first podcast episode from people telling me where they're from, and it's just had me thinking about how many people in this community are making videos in their second languages and leaving comments in their second languages. And yeah, as I was working in French this week, I just wanted to let you know that I see you, and I know it's really, really hard. And I hope that everybody feels welcome here. Anyway, socks. I have made a lot of progress. I have a pair of Oona socks. I'm really, really happy with them. They fit great. Yeah, so the last time I was updating you, I was talking modifications and I had shortened the leg part of the sock. The only other modification I ended up making was to the toe. When I was knitting on the toe, it seemed like it was going to be really long, so I ended up finishing it one round early. In hindsight, definitely didn't need to do that, but I'm really happy with these. And that being said about finishing a round early, I still have an entire skein of yarn. So these 2 socks, because I made them shorter in the leg, only used 50 grams. Which is incredible. I could do an entire other pair if I wanted to. For reference, I'm like a US size 9 in shoes, so fairly long foot, but I did shorten the leg and I knit a size 1. So with that and this being a pretty open gauge with the lace, it was really, really close. I wouldn't necessarily go out and only buy 50 grams, but can make it work. I end up really, really liking the heel on this. This is that Eye of Partridge heel, and I've decided I really, really like that look. I've also decided though that I don't love the garter stitch on the side. To me, it's just a little bit distracting from the rest of it. I would kind of prefer if it was just stockinette so that it was like nice and clean and didn't distract from the lace. But I do appreciate it as like an interesting design element. The other thing I wanted to comment on was the yarn. This is the first time I've had a pair of socks where I'm thinking to myself, I actually don't want to wear these because they feel so like luxe and fancy. So this is the Filcolana Arwetta, and it is merino, so merino and nylon. And I think that merino is what's making it, I don't know how it'll show up on camera, but these are like the drapiest socks. And drapey is kind of an odd word to associate with socks, but that's kind of all I can think of to describe this. Like just soft and drapey and fancy feeling. So I'm a big fan of this yarn. However, I haven't actually worn them out yet because honestly, they're really pretty and I just want to keep them looking pretty. And I've never felt that way about socks before. Really happy with the fit on these, learned a lot, and I did cast on something else. I kind of changed plans a little bit. This is the Lang Jawol that I was showing you earlier. And the pattern I ended up going with is the Florence Miller Mountain Walk socks. So this seemed like a good bet for me because I've already made her petal drop socks, so it's nothing too new in terms of the designer. This is also the exact same stitch count as these. So what I'll be learning here is if I can get away on the same stitch count if it isn't lace. So that's kind of the only variable I'm changing here. This is ribbed and the cables you see are mock cables. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. If you've seen any of my videos and also what I am wearing, you will know that I really like cables. So cables don't really intimidate me, and to me the mock cable here is like equally time consuming as a real cable. So in my head I keep thinking I might as well do the real cable and it would look a little more like defined. So I'm not 100% sold on that yet. However, I do think it's like a nice subtle pattern that it's creating. So I think I'll be a fan of it at the end of the day. I have made some modifications here again. This is not, I'll put up a picture so that you can see, but this is not the original cuff. Because the sock itself is ribbed, the original pattern kind of starts with that as the cuff. But I wanted like a regular cuff in my regular like twisted rib format. And specifically, I did the exact same cuff as I did on this sock. And what I'm kind of thinking here is that I'm just about ready to start the heel. And I think that I might do this exact heel, but without those garter stitches. And what I might end up with by the end of this video is like a really cute set of socks, because hang on a second and let me show you. So these are some of the yarns that I was showing you before that I'm considering working with, but I hadn't really held them up together yet. And look at how nice those look together. So the more I was looking at these side by side, I was thinking, if I did one pair of socks out of each of these, that would be the cutest matching set. So what I'm gonna try to do is keep them all relatively the same size in terms of like length of the leg and length of the cuff, and that way they'll sort of match. But obviously I'm switching up the pattern itself. This first one was lace, this new one is a mock cable, and we'll see what I feel like doing next. Another thing I'll mention is that in my last podcast, after I was showing the second sock I'd ever finished, I think, and I was saying that I thought I preferred toe-up socks at the time. That might still be true, but this is now my second cuff down sock of this video. This was also cuff down, and I don't mind it. I'm starting to think that the more sock experience I have, I feel kind of 50-50 about it, because I can't really try this on as a sock right now, but what I can do is hold it up to a sock that I have that I know fits and kind of use that to figure out when I should be starting the heel, which as you can see is right now. So yeah, I'm having a really good time with these socks. This nice easy one has really been the thing for me at the end of this week. The good news is today is Canadian Thanksgiving and I am actually on vacation next week, so I'll have quite a bit of time and I should be able to like recharge a bit and will hopefully feel like doing something a bit more complicated. I'm gonna go sew on these buttons, really excited about that, and I will come back with my next sock update. Okay, it's been a while. I think the last time I updated you, it was Thanksgiving, and now my vacation is over. I was quite offline during my vacation, just spent time with family. It was really nice. But we're back to another morning update before I join work for the day. So I do have some updates for you, namely Mountain Walk socks. I am so happy with these. So as a reminder, I used Lang gel wool for these, and I actually think that that was a very interesting yarn to do right after these, which was the Filcolana Arwetta, because these look quite similar like in the packaging, but they feel very, very different. So it's an interesting back-to-back. So like this, I was saying, was very like drapey. It's merino, so very drapey, sort of luxe feeling, delicate almost. This just feels like a sock. I don't know how else to describe it, like a nice thick sock. Like I do not have that feeling of not wanting to wear these because I don't want to ruin them kind of thing. The other interesting thing about this yarn is that it comes with a spool of nylon thread in the middle, and I knew that. I just didn't know what to expect from it. I think in my head, for some reason, I was imagining like a little string of plastic, which I should have known better because I do sew, not a lot, but from time to time. And I know that the sewing thread is polyester, so like why would the nylon thread be any different? It is somewhat different, but sort of like in the opposite way I was expecting. It's quite thick. Like I would say that this is just like, it seems like sock yarn to me, but more tightly spun and thinner. But it is, it'll be hard to tell on camera, but it is thicker than I expected. Like I would guess just from looking at it and feeling it that this is like a lace weight. So what that means is that if you do choose to hold it with the sock yarn for like the heel or the toe, I did it for the heel just because I figured I might as well try. It makes for quite a thick, dense heel, like thicker and denser than I expected. And I think there are cases where I would not want that at all. Like for example, on a beautiful drapey sock like this, I wouldn't want to be like adding thickness to the heel. For this one, I was quite worried before blocking it that like it wouldn't even bend after blocking. It was so dense, because you basically end up going up to, if I'm right that that's nearly lace weight, that's probably like a DK weight thickness in the heel, and still on a 2.25 millimeter needle. So it does get like quite chunky, but you can tell that the durability is obviously going to be great. So yeah, really happy to have tried that yarn. I do have some thoughts on the pattern. Really enjoyed the pattern. One really interesting thing, last time I was updating you, I was on the first sock and I was saying that the faux cable, I think this was the first sock. Yeah, I was saying that the faux cable was a little bit tricky, and it involved knitting through the back loop. I won't give too much detail because it is a paid pattern, but personally I don't mind knitting through the back loop because I am a combination knitter, so it involves that anyway. But something about the specific stitch to get this faux cable was just like a little bit awkward. However, the two socks are asymmetrical, so I don't remember which is which, but if this was a left-leaning cable, the second sock was a right-leaning cable. And that one was not through the back loop and was much easier. And I really like the design feature of having the asymmetrical ones. However, I don't know that it's worth it to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, like I cast this on to have an easy project, so if I had realized this in hindsight, I just would have done two of the easy one for sure. The second reason is that because they were so different from each other, I think that my tension was different on the two, and I don't know if you'll be able to see, but the easy one turned out significantly bigger. They both fit, and it's nothing that will prevent me from wearing them, but I just thought that was really interesting. Like I don't know if I hold them up one over the other. Like, I counted the number of rows, and this one in the back is coming out to be quite a bit different. I was also thinking while I was making these that this without the faux cables would make just like a really nice ribbed sock. So I could see myself using it as like a recipe for that. Although once I take out the faux cables with my modifications of the heel and cuff, that's just like barely following the pattern. But it does give me ideas for future, more simple socks, which is nice. Okay, so I think that's my only update. Oh, one kind of exciting thing, gotta be careful not to dox myself here, but my yarn arrived, the Knitting for Olive order that I was waiting for. So I've gotta go pick that up. I'm excited about that. Okay, I'm gonna go to work for the day, but I'm sure that I will update you soon because I do have another sock on the needles and I will want to be updating you on that soon. I just got caught in the rain on the way back from Canada Post. If you're curious what that yarn I picked up is for, I did talk about my plans in my first podcast episode. So once I do switch back from sock knitting to garment knitting, if you're wondering what's going on there, I talked about it in that episode. But here, we're talking about socks. So, updates for you. Berries and bird tracks. Sock number 1 is done. Now, the last time that you saw this, it was knit up to about here. The toe was done. What you did not see is that I then knit to about here using the largest size. On my first attempt, what had happened was I was going with like a hybrid between the second and third size, and whatever I was doing, I was like increasing and decreasing stitches. It ended up too small, but I figured a good idea would be to try the third size and just see, knit it to pattern, see what happens. Got to about here, realized it was too big. So I frogged it back again, and this is now my third attempt. And what I ended up doing, I think I was being a little bit too hard on myself actually with struggling to find a fit for this sock, because there's a difference of 8 stitches between those sizes, which is like pretty significant for a sock. And the stitch count that I know works for me based on these two is right in the middle. So I kind of am in between sizes. I probably could have gone up a size and sized down the needles, but I've gotten so used to this 2.25 millimeter needle. What I decided to do was stick to my stitch count, and it was actually quite easy to modify this pattern. So this ended up being the same stitch count as the other two. The only difference that I made was when I got to about here, and this was a recommendation from the comment section of my podcast, instead of decreasing stitches, which is what I did the first time, I decreased the needle size. I went down to a 2 millimeter needle from about here to right when I started the heel flap. So that basically meant that the like arch of my foot is a little bit tighter of a gauge, but then the parts like the heel and the ankle, I don't have to be concerned about it fitting over my foot. I think that's a really good solution for me, because I think the majority of the sock could have fit at like a 2 millimeter needle or at that smaller stitch count. But I know from the other two socks that this stitch count for the cuff is like very comfortable, and I wouldn't want to go lower than that. So what I'm kind of thinking at this point is that this stitch count, this needle size works, and I could probably go a little bit higher, but no lower. Love the pattern. It's just a beautiful cable. I found it to be like really potato chippy, because basically every few rows, you're getting to either finishing a diamond or adding another bauble, which is just very satisfying. So it's been going quite quickly. I wouldn't say that it's like, maybe for some people it's a memorizable cable chart. I'm very bad at memorizing charts. Even like this lace chart took me a very long time through those socks. So for me, I would not say memorizable, but I will say that by my third attempt at this sock, and now being this far into the second one, I almost got it memorized. My last note on the pattern is that I ended up buying it on Ravelry. I had the book out from the library, obviously had to give it back, and I figured at that point I would just get it from Ravelry. And I don't know if this is true for all of the 52 Weeks of Socks patterns, but a lot of them seem to be available on Ravelry from the individual designers. And I'm happy to support Yuka as a designer. This is the second sock that I've knit from her, and I'm planning to do more. And her patterns are like so technical and detailed. They're kind of that style that gives all of the technical info but doesn't like over explain the techniques or anything. So I really enjoy that, and there's more in that PDF that I bought than there was space for in the 52 Weeks of Socks version. So I love that book as like kind of a beautiful inspiration book, but as like a technical pattern to follow along, I think I'd recommend the one on Ravelry. So yeah, I think that's my only update for now. I'm going to finish that second sock probably like tomorrow, and then I will come back and update you on what's next, because I do have some ideas. I will say that my idea of having like a beautiful matching set of socks, these look so nice together. All three of these colors. Yeah, these just look fantastic. I'm gonna have to take some pictures when I'm all done because these are very, very nice. Look at this little collection of socks. I am so happy with it. I do have an update for you. It actually isn't any of these socks. The last time I talked to you, I'd finished at least the first one of this one, and now I have the set. Very happy with it. What I'm about to show you, I do have one more sock for this video, one more sock left in me for October. But what I'm about to show you is a little bit crazy. And I do feel like if you've made it this far into a video of me talking about socks, you're hopefully going to understand. But also, if you want to make fun of me in the comments, I completely understand. So, I've been talking a lot in this video about like each of these socks being a data point and like changing certain variables, and that was kind of turning into a lot to keep track of in my head, so I just decided to put it on paper. And I'm going to talk you through what I've charted here. This is a graph of all of the socks that I've knit so far, including the ones that I knit prior to this video. And I'm basically just trying to keep track of which ones fit, which ones didn't, given which variables I have been changing. What has helped me in this process is that I've kept the needle size the same for all of my socks. So you can see all of them have been on 2.25 millimeters. One small exception is on this middle sock. I went down to a 2 millimeter needle for like the arch of the foot, but the major parts of it were still on 2.25. So that's what the chart is as a whole. And then the X and Y axes here are my two changing variables. So on the X-axis, I have the weight of the yarn, which is in meters by 50 grams. I opened up this video by saying that I had started with the Sandnes Garn Sisu, and that it turned out to be quite a bit thicker than other sock yarns. So this is, I think, an important variable to keep track of. Then I've also got the stitch count. Now, this is a little tricky to explain. You will have noticed in this video, I've been trying not to mention like specific stitch counts because these are all paid patterns. But what I've ended up doing here is that X
is the stitch count on the very first sock that I knit, and that was the petal drop sock. And then everything else is going to be relative to that sock. So we've got x minus 2, x minus 4, etc. So the other thing I'm trying to keep track of here, you can see my legend up here. I'm keeping track of how they fit, too big, too small, or just right, and then whether it is lace or cables. I think in a perfect world, I would have done this as like 2 separate charts, one for lace socks, one for cable socks, but I can only knit so much. So it's all going to be on one, and we're just going to kind of try to visually keep track of it. So what I've ended up with here, this is the very first sock that I made. That was the petal drop sock. It was way too big. I started this video by saying it fit, but it was too big. Now that I'm thinking about it, to be so honest, I think I threw it in the dryer so that it would fit. So it was way too big. And that's why it's up there with the too big marking on it. And so it was a fairly heavyweight yarn and that original stitch count. The next sock that I made, I decided to go way down in the stitch count, and it was also a lighter weight yarn, and it was also a cable. So it ended up there. It fits, but it is quite tight. So it's got the too small marking there. Then we get into the socks from this video. So first sock was the Oona sock. That is where we went up to this kind of middle stitch count, and it was a fairly standard yarn weight. So it's one of these here. And then this sock, the Mountain Walk sock, which I am calling a cable, even though it's a faux cable, it's in the exact same place. Same yarn weight, same stitch count. And these both fit. So those are our first good data points. Then we move over to our berries and bird tracks, which is this one. Little asterisk here because of the 2mm needle in the middle, but I do feel comfortable putting it right there, and it does fit. So that yarn was just slightly heavier. Now, I've also got 2 extra data points plotted here, and that is because the first attempt I did at this sock was with fewer stitches. It did not fit. Then I tried a size up. It also did not fit. So that gave me 2 extra data points. I didn't even need to finish those attempts in order to learn that. Okay, so I think what we're gonna end up with here is like a line of best fit. And I imagine it's gonna go somewhere like this, but I don't know for sure yet. And what's kind of interesting is that my last yarn that I'm gonna use in this video is the amaranth fibers, which I showed in the beginning. And in the beginning of this video, I was considering one of the patterns from 52 Weeks of Socks, and I kind of said offhand that it looked like waves to me. And this has happened to me before. This has happened to me before with cable patterns, but I get really, really picky about them. And as soon as I had that idea of like waves in my head, I needed it to be like the perfect wave. And I also tend to prefer like cables like this Yucca one here, where there's like a nice amount of separation between the cables. You could say the same for the Mountain Walk socks, actually. So anyway, this is the second crazy thing that I am going to show you for this update. I am at this point self-drafting a sock. So this is not a pattern. I ended up just writing up my own cable chart and tried to make it look as much like waves as possible. If you look at this sideways, the way I'm kind of thinking about it is different waves, cables, with different amplitudes and frequencies, if anybody else is a STEM person. So yeah, I'm thrilled with this, to be honest. I think it looks so good, and it's been very satisfying to work on. But what's interesting about this is this yarn, as it turns out, is a thickness, a weight that's even to the left of the sisu. It's actually like along this axis here. So I know that that would be too many stitches. I have a feeling this would be too, because it works for the finer weight yarns. So I'm actually working with a stitch count that's like down in this area here. So what I'm hoping is that with this being the last sock of this video, we will get an answer to what fits down here, and that should give us like a line of best fit, which is very nice.
You guys, look at this sock. I am so happy with this. Happy Halloween. It is the last day of October. I'm not gonna let this video go past Socktober, so this is a little wrap up that we're doing here. This is my costume for today, if you're curious. Very lazy, very simple. And I will not wear that for the whole update because I know that you won't be watching this on Halloween. So I owe you quite an update about this sock, and I do apologize in advance that this is not a pattern. I know that that makes it a little bit less useful as a sock to talk about in this video, but I did want to share it anyway because I'm honestly just so proud of this. I got it onto the blocker last night and I was literally looking at it and going, don't get emotional, it's just a sock. And I promise I'm not even an emotional person. I've just had kind of a crazy week, to be honest. And this sock, I'm so proud of the fact that it came out of my head. When I was editing this video earlier this week, the beginning of it, and the fact that I started this video with so little confidence that I would be able to get like any of these socks to fit, and to get from there to what I think is my favorite sock of this video and maybe the best fitting one. And the fact that it came out of my head, I'm really, really happy with it. I will talk you through it a little bit because, fun fact, this actually is not the same sock that I showed you in my last update. This was the sock that I showed you. It has now been left abandoned. So what happened is I started this sock toe up. It was going really well. It was fitting well. And then I got to the heel flap and I decided to do something a little bit different with the design. The easiest way to explain this is that with the Oona sock, we were talking about how it has this eye of partridge heel and how it has the garter stitch like edge or border along it. So I really liked that. I just don't like garter stitch very much. So I started thinking, what else could I have frame that heel flap that is not garter stitch, but would still give it like, that wouldn't be too thin or anything. Like I don't think you would want lace there or anything. So I'll show you on the finished version because it's much easier to see. I have the cable down there. So what I ended up with here is two mirrored cables going down. And I do say going down because this one is cuff down. At this point, I have no real preference between cuff down and toe up. Like I would be happy to choose either pattern. However, for this particular design, what I figured out was that the toe up heel flap just didn't work very well with that cable on the side. It meant having to figure out like decreases alongside the cable, and I did figure it out and I got to the end of it, but it ended up looking like a little wonky with those decreases. Like especially on one side, it's like, you know how when you do an SSK in particular, it never looks quite invisible. And to have that as part of a cable, it's fine, but I would say it was a similar situation to what I was explaining with the berries and bird tracks, where I frogged it at the beginning of this video because honestly, I turned into a bit of a perfectionist and I was thinking, it's not perfect, and because of that, it would be fine, but I don't want to make a whole second sock when I'm not totally happy with it. So I felt the same about this. I figured might as well restart, end up with something I'm really happy with, and that will make me happy to do a second sock as well. So I restarted it, cuff down, also made a little modification to the cable motifs because my goal here was to make them look like waves basically. So I've got two different cable motifs. It is symmetrical. So the cables, or at least the little cables, they're sort of mirrored from one side to the other.
And then also these two are mirrored with respect to each other. And then that one continues down onto the heel flap. That one continues all the way down. And I'm just really happy with this. So twisted rib cuff, like I've done for all of these. Eye of partridge heel, cuffed down construction. Other than that, nothing too crazy here. One funny story about this, I said that I had kind of a crazy week. My niece is staying with me at the moment. The same niece I went skating with earlier in this video, so she's 2. And so when I finished this and got it on the blocker last night, it was wet. And I went up to her and I said, "Look what I made, isn't it cool?" And she was very impressed. And she wanted to take it, and she did recognize it as a sock, which makes me very happy. And then for some reason, she took this wet sock and like tried to eat it, put it in her mouth. So that was fun. So yeah, I think that's everything I have to say about this sock. I thought that I would wrap up this video by talking a bit about the yarns, because this is now my 6th pair of socks. By the way, I hope that it's not too unsatisfying. Is unsatisfying a word? I hope it doesn't bother you too much that I'm not doing the 2nd sock in this video. I promise that I will though, and if you want to subscribe, you'll probably see it in an upcoming podcast. But I thought that I'd finish this video by talking about the sock yarns that I have tried. I won't include this one in this conversation because I feel like totally recommend Amaranth Fibers if you're looking to support a Canadian business. But I do feel like hand-dyed yarns are just kind of a different category. What I want to talk about a little bit is the 5 different commercial sock yarns that I've tried, because I do think it's an interesting comparison. Caveat here that I can't really speak to the wear of these 3 sock yarns. I feel like I have a good guess of how they will wear, but obviously they're still looking pristine. I haven't really worn them at all. But what I'm gonna speak to here is like, if I was in a yarn store today, which of the 5 yarns I've tried would I reach for? And I think that if you're just getting into sock knitting, that's probably an interesting thing for you to know. So the 5 yarns that I've tried are the Pro Lana, the Sandnes Garn, the West Yorkshire Spinners, the Lang, and the Filcolana. I think at the bottom of that list for me is the Pro Lana. To me, it just felt a little bit plasticky. I will say that that one's wearing very well. I've worn those socks quite a bit, so it's not that I would avoid it, it just wouldn't be the first one that I reach for. It seems just like a very good, solid sock yarn, but maybe not the first one I would reach for. What I would put in like 4th place is the Sandnes Garn, unfortunately. I really did enjoy working with the Sandnes Garn, but I talked a lot in this video about how the weight of it was a little bit heavier. To me, that's just like a little bit of a complication. And I think that there are probably other yarns that I would reach for first. However, if I had some, or if I was in love with a color, I would absolutely pick it up. It was really nice to work with, and it makes for like a really nice soft sock. Soft, but like kind of thick and cushiony. At the top of my list, so what I would absolutely, I think I have some in my cart for an order right now, is I'm gonna call this a tie because these 2 are such different yarns from each other. Again, it's like different categories. The Filcolana Arwetta is the first thing I would reach for if I wanted something like fancy, soft, and drapey. This is really nice for that. Something like a lace sock. It also has a really great color selection. If I wanted something more rustic, West Yorkshire Spinners, for sure. It feels nice and durable and rustic, but it's not too heavy and it doesn't have that plasticky feeling. My only caveat with the West Yorkshire Spinners is that the color selection isn't quite as broad, not as to my taste. That's obviously a subjective thing. I do think
that the Langja wool has quite a broad color spectrum. I also think it's maybe more accessible in Canada. I'll try to leave some links below. I don't have like affiliate links or anything. I literally wouldn't know how. But I will leave links below to like where you're able to get these in Canada, where I was able to source them from at least. But I do think the Lang is a little more widely available. Very jealous if you are in the UK and the West Yorkshire Spinners is like widely available. We do have it here. It's just like maybe not all of the colors, maybe a little harder to come across in person. So yeah, I would absolutely reach for the Lang again. I would say that it's a very comparable yarn to the West Yorkshire Spinners. Just it feels like a little bit thicker to me, which is actually interesting because this is a heavier yarn based on my chart, but this feels a little bit like thicker and more cushiony. It also has that nylon thread that comes with it. So if that's something that you are interested in trying, or if you're like really worried about durability, like if I wanted to make like, I don't know, a hiking sock or something, I would get this and I would use the nylon thread in the heel and probably the toe as well. So yeah, that is my like very unofficial ranking of these yarns, subject to change as they wear. But yeah, I'm just gonna wrap up this video by saying that sock knitters, I understand you. It's so interesting because a year ago when I got really deep into knitting, I had zero interest in socks. I just thought, I want to make my own clothes. I see no reason to be making socks. I 100% get it now. I'm absolutely one of you. This is such a nice little collection that I've created here. And I'm so happy that I was able to finish it off with this sock here. If you made it this far in the video, maybe let me know in the comments because I think that's incredible if anyone spent this long talking about socks with me. Also, if you have any questions about any of the patterns or yarns that I tried in this video, I would be happy to talk more about it in the comments. And then also, if you are a beginner knitter, let me know if you have any questions, anything that you would like me to touch on in the future. I want to make sure that my videos are like very accessible to all different levels of knitters. So if you have any questions, please just let me know and I would be really happy to hear about it. So thank you, and I will see you in my next podcast episode if you would like to subscribe.